Hi, I'm Emma. And if you asked me a year ago, I'd have said I was the luckiest woman alive. I have a stable career as a mid-level manager in a large tech company, a fantastic group of friends, and a family that always has my back. But the day I became Mrs. Emma Sullivan, everything changed. My husband, Mark, a graphic designer with a heart of gold, or so I thought, became a different person entirely. But let's start from the beginning, shall we? The wedding day. I had always dreamt of a simple, elegant ceremony, a celebration of love surrounded by family and close friends. That morning, as I looked at myself in the mirror wearing a simple but elegant white gown, I thought my dreams were coming true. "You look beautiful, sweetie," my mom whispered, her eyes brimming with happy tears. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope everything goes well." The ceremony was lovely, our vows heartfelt, but as soon as we entered the reception hall, a sense of dread washed over me. That was the moment I fully met Mark's parents, Lisa and George. "Ah, the bride," George sneered as he scrutinized me from head to toe. "You look different than what we're used to." I forced a smile, replying, "Well, I hope different is okay, George." Lisa chimed in, "Well, we'll see about that. By the way, dear, don't you think your dress is a bit much?" Her eyes narrowed at my wedding gown. It was her choice. "Mom," Mark intervened, but with a tone that was more apologetic to them than supportive of me. "Let's try to have a good time." The evening was a parade of passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled insults. During dinner, Lisa interrupted a conversation I was having with my cousin Sarah to criticize the menu. "So, Emma," she said, looking disdainfully at her plate, "this is an interesting choice for a meal. Not what we'd usually serve, but then we're not used to this. Rustic simplicity." I clenched my teeth, searching for patience. "We thought a farm-to-table menu would be a nice touch, Lisa." Mark nudged me under the table as if encouraging me to let it slide. But why should I? This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. When it came time for speeches, George took the opportunity to take another jab at me. "We're glad Mark found someone," he began, holding his champagne flute up high. "Even if she is a career woman, perhaps now she can focus on more important things, like family." I looked at Mark, my eyes screaming for him to say something, anything to defend me. But he just laughed nervously and said, "Dad has an odd sense of humor. Don't mind him." Oh, I minded. I minded a lot. And as the night drew to an end, Mark, perhaps sensing my withdrawal, pulled me aside. "Look, I know my parents are difficult, but they're old-fashioned. They'll come around. Can we just focus on us now?" I sighed, thinking maybe he was right. Maybe they would change. But as I glanced back and saw Lisa and George gossiping with a group of Mark's relatives, their eyes darting towards me every so often, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into a battle I hadn't signed up for. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but as I lay in bed next to my new husband, all I felt was an unsettling emptiness. I told myself it was just wedding day jitters, nerves giving way to exhaustion. But deep down, a part of me knew this was a foreshadowing of what my life had in store. And so, despite the picturesque setting, the beautiful ceremony, and the guests who showered us with love and gifts, my wedding day left me with a heavy heart and an ominous feeling that things were about to get a lot more complicated. The next chapters of my life would be unlike anything I'd ever expected, a struggle that pitted me against the very people who were supposed to be my new family. But that's a tale for another day, a tale of heartbreak, betrayal, but most of all, revenge. After the wedding, and the myriad uncomfortable moments that came with it, I hoped that moving into my house would mark the beginning of a happier chapter. Mark seemed excited too. "Wow, babe, this place is amazing," he exclaimed as we stepped over the threshold, his eyes scanning the cozy living room adorned with the minimalist decor I loved so much. "Thanks. I've worked really hard for this place," I said, setting down a box labeled Emma's Books. "You deserve it." Mark hugged me. But as he held me, I couldn't help but think of the lackluster support he'd shown in front of his parents. I shook off the thought, reminding myself that we were just starting our life together. Things would get better. They had to. I led Mark through the house, showing him each room, secretly hoping that this tour would symbolically cleanse the negativity from our wedding day. Finally, I took him to the study, where a small, discreet safe was built into the wall. "I keep our emergency fund here," I said, opening it to reveal the $150,000 I'd saved over the years. "It's our financial cushion, just in case anything happens." Mark looked impressed. "Wow, you really are something, Emma." "It's not just my money. It's ours now," I replied, though a small voice inside me urged caution. Before long, we settled into a routine. I went to work, managed my team at the tech company, and came back to a house that was slowly becoming a home for two. Mark freelanced from home and promised to chip in when he could. Life was quiet, and for a brief moment it seemed like everything would work out after all, until the day Mark casually mentioned that his parents couldn't afford to live on their own anymore. "They're struggling, Em," he told me, his voice filled with concern. "They have nowhere else to go." I remembered the insults, the humiliation, and my heart sank. But then I looked at Mark, my husband, the man I loved, and told myself that maybe living together would mend the broken fences. After all, how bad could it be? I agreed, but under one condition. "I'll agree to it, but that money in the safe stays untouched unless we both agree to use it. It's for emergencies only." "Of course, babe," he reassured me. "I wouldn't dream of touching it without discussing it with you." That should have comforted me. But as I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, I was gripped by an uneasy feeling. What if this was a mistake? My mind began to race. What if they tried to take control of my life, my home, even the money I had so carefully saved? Suddenly, I felt a strong urge to protect what was mine. The next day, I installed a hidden camera next to the safe, justifying it as a security measure for our rainy day fund. I had no idea then that the storm clouds were already gathering on the horizon, that my life was about to turn into a relentless tempest, leaving me with no choice but to fight back. So there it was, my house, my safe, and my life, teetering on the edge of upheaval. The next chapters were going to be rough, full of battles I never signed up for. But sometimes life throws you into the ring without warning, and all you can do is roll with the punches and strategize your next move. And if I'd learned anything from my years in the corporate world, it was this: always be prepared for any eventuality. Little did I know that my preparation would be my saving grace, my weapon in a war I never wanted but was forced to wage. But for now, the camera stood as my silent guardian, watching over a part of my life that would soon become a battlefield. And as I tested its recording, ensuring it worked perfectly, I felt a sense of dread mingled with readiness. I was arming myself for a war that was already at my doorstep, even if I didn't fully realize it yet. The day Lisa and George moved into my home was the day the nightmare truly began. They arrived with a truckload of belongings, an air of entitlement, and demeaning smiles that I'd come to dread. "Ah, Emma, so this is your little abode," George said, as he set his foot inside, almost as if he were stepping into a humble shack rather than the carefully furnished home I'd invested years of hard work into. "It's cozy," Lisa added, her tone dripping with condescension. "Yeah, well, it's home," I said, locking eyes with Mark, who looked away. Before I knew it, they'd taken over. Lisa commandeered the kitchen like she was born to rule it. George decided the living room was his new kingdom, monopolizing the TV remote and rearranging my furniture. One evening, as I was preparing dinner after a long day at work, Lisa waltzed in, her eyes narrowing at the stir-fry I was cooking. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" she asked. "Pretty sure I've been cooking for myself for years," I responded, trying to keep my voice level. She smirked, taking a wooden spoon from the holder and stirring the pot herself. "I've never seen anyone put so much garlic into a stir-fry. But then again, what do I know?" My fingers itched to snatch the spoon back, but I bit my tongue. This was my home, my kitchen, but the atmosphere had been so tainted by their presence that I felt like an intruder in my own space. Weeks passed, and the tension escalated. Every day was a new form of subtle torment, constant nitpicking, backhanded compliments, and endless criticisms. Mark, who I'd hoped would be my ally in this battle, was turning out to be anything but. He'd sit quietly during dinner while his parents took turns picking apart my life, my choices, and even my cooking. "You know, Emma, I've noticed you don't spend much time cleaning. Isn't that what a woman is supposed to do when she has a home? George remarked one night at the dinner table. Yeah, Emma, you're at work all day. So why is the house still a mess? Mark chimed in, siding with his parents yet again. I stared at him, incredulous. I work a full-time job. Mark, just like you, I need to decompress after work. Can't you see your parents are making things difficult here? Let's not fight. You know my parents are old. They have their ways, he said dismissively, echoing the same hollow excuses he'd made since day one. And then came the boiling point. One evening, a family dinner turned into an all-out war. The topic: a set of porcelain dishes that had gone missing, dishes that, according to Lisa, were part of her priceless collection. You probably broke them. You're so careless, Lisa accused, her voice rising with every word. That's not fair, Lisa. I haven't touched your dishes, I retorted, my own temper flaring. In a flash, Lisa stood up and slapped me hard across the face. The room fell silent. Mark looked shocked but said nothing. George simply grinned as if he'd been waiting for this moment. You need to leave, Emma. Mark finally spoke, but his words weren't directed at his mother. They were directed at me. That was it. I was done. Done playing nice, done pretending things would get better, and most of all, done being the punching bag for people who should have treated me like family. I packed a small bag and walked out, seething with anger and humiliation, but resolute in my next steps. I booked a hotel room and, for the first time in months, breathed freely. In that small, sterile room, it hit me. This wasn't just a bad phase. It was my life imploding. But as I sat there replaying the events of the last few months, a fire ignited within me. A fire fueled by every insult, every slap, every betrayal. And in that moment, I decided enough was enough. They wanted a villain in their twisted family drama. Well, they were about to get one. And this villain wasn't going down without a fight. As the hotel room door closed behind me, the weight of what had transpired felt like a 10-ton truck. The slaps still stung, both physically and emotionally. My marriage had become a battlefield, and I'd been left without an ally. But even in that bitter moment, clarity began to form. I sat on the hotel bed, opened my laptop, and began researching legal procedures. Divorce, embezzlement, abuse. Topics I never thought I'd need expertise in, but here I was. The next morning, with a plan beginning to shape in my mind, I drove back to my house. Or should I say, the war zone. The atmosphere was icy as I walked in, met by 3 pairs of judgmental eyes. So you're back, Lisa said, her voice as cold as the gaze she fixed on me. I live here, remember? I shot back. I want to get my stuff, I declared, catching Mark's eye as I moved toward the study. He followed me, and for the first time in a long time, we were alone. Emma, can we talk? He began, his voice shaky. Maybe we can work things out. I looked at him, incredulous. Work things out? Your mother slapped me, Mark. You threw me out of my own home. What is there to work out? Look, I know things have gotten out of hand, but they're my parents, he said, practically pleading. Which doesn't give them the right to treat me like dirt or for you to side with them every time. Ignoring him, I opened the safe. My eyes widened. It was empty. The $150,000 I'd saved was gone. My emergency fund, my safety net, vanished. Where's the money, Mark? I was trembling with rage. I don't know, Emma. I swear I haven't touched it. He looked genuinely puzzled, but at this point, I couldn't trust him. Storming out of the study, I confronted Lisa. Where is my money? Your money? You mean our family money? She sneered. You're too stupid to handle that kind of money. This was my breaking point. Their transgressions had been many, but this was unforgivable. I locked eyes with her and said, You've made a big mistake, Lisa. She laughed. What are you going to do? Run away again? No, I wasn't going to run away. This was war, and I had just been handed the weapon I needed to win it. I returned to my hotel room and checked the footage from the hidden camera I'd placed near the safe. Just as I suspected, there was Lisa, rummaging through the safe, her hands grabbing handfuls of cash. I downloaded the footage, making multiple copies. Then I contacted a lawyer, a shark in the field with a reputation for winning cases that seemed unwinnable. As I sent over the video evidence, a sense of empowerment washed over me. It was time for them to learn that the worst thing they ever did was underestimate me. I was going to take back control not just of my home and my money, but of my life. Revenge wasn't just an option, it was the only course of action left. The next chapter wouldn't be easy. Legal battles never are. But I was fueled by every insult, every slap, every betrayal, and every dollar stolen from me. I was ready to turn the page and write a new chapter, one where I wasn't the victim, but the victor. Lisa, George, and yes, even Mark were about to find out what happens when you corner a wounded animal. I had been pushed to the brink, and now there was no holding back. They had taken my kindness for weakness, my silence for submission, but I had one thing they didn't have, the burning will to fight back. And as I lay in my hotel bed, finalizing plans with my lawyer, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time, I was the one conjuring the winds. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be huddled in a conference room with a high-powered lawyer strategizing about how to dismantle the lives of people I once considered family, I would have called them insane. Yet here I was, sharing video evidence and legal documents with Sarah, a renowned lawyer whose reputation for ruthlessness was only rivaled by her record of victories. Emma, this footage is excellent, but will need more to prove emotional and psychological abuse. Any more evidence? Sarah questioned as we scrolled through emails, text messages, and other potential evidence on her sleek glass desk. I've recorded some of the conversations and arguments. They're vile, demeaning, and provide context for the constant abuse, I replied, handing her a flash drive. Sarah listened intently to the audio files and nodded. This will build a strong case. Before we could proceed, I needed to return home to collect more evidence, primarily financial documents proving the embezzlement. The thought of stepping back into that house made my skin crawl, but it was a necessary evil. Armed with a hidden body camera to record any further abuse, I braced myself for the chaos that awaited me. The house was eerily quiet as I entered. Back for more, Emma. Lisa's voice shattered the silence as she appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Ignoring her taunts, I made my way to the study. To my surprise, Mark was there, rummaging through papers. My papers. What are you doing, Mark? The calm in my voice surprised even me. He jumped, visibly startled. I was just looking for some old tax returns, he stammered. Tax returns that belonged to me, I asserted, now fully aware of the audacity he had to even touch my personal documents. I'll take those. Snatching the papers from his hands, I noticed he had also opened a drawer containing a bundle of letters. Letters from my late grandmother that held sentimental value to me. He was trying to erase every trace of my existence in my own home. Mark, did you ever love me? Or was I just a financial plan for you and your family? I asked, my eyes searching for any trace of the man I had fallen in love with. Emma, it's not like that, he began, but I cut him off. Save it. Your time for explanations is up. I gathered my documents, placed them in a folder, and started to walk out. As I reached the door, Lisa blocked my way. Where do you think you're going with those? She sneered, eyeing the folder. Away from this hellhole for good, I retorted, capturing the exchange on my hidden camera. I managed to brush past her, but not before she snarled, You're going to regret this, Emma. I already regret ever becoming a part of this family, I responded, stepping out and closing the door behind me, possibly for the last time. Driving back to the lawyer's office, my hands shook. It was a blend of fear, rage, and an overpowering sense of liberation. I handed over the collected evidence to Sarah, who scanned through them meticulously. We've got enough to not only file for divorce, but to also charge Lisa for theft, and perhaps even emotional abuse, she said, looking up from her screen. And what about Mark? Can he be charged for complacency or aiding and abetting? I questioned. We'll explore that avenue. But for now, focus on reclaiming your life, Sarah reassured. As I sat in the conference room, the gravity of my discoveries finally sunk in. The evidence I had amassed was no longer just files, audio clips, or video footage. They were shards of a shattered illusion, puzzle pieces that completed a disturbing picture. A picture of betrayal, manipulation, and most heartbreakingly, a love that was never genuine to begin with. The next phase would be legally challenging and emotionally draining, but I was ready. They say knowledge is power, and for the first time in months, I felt powerful, equipped with truths that were as liberating as they were painful. I'd discovered not just their deceit, but also my resilience, my worth, and the lengths to which I'd go to protect myself. I was ready for the legal battle that loomed ahead, ready to reclaim not just my stolen money or my tarnished dignity, but my hijacked life. And as I left Sarah's office, the setting sun seemed to whisper promises of a new dawn, a new chapter, and a life where the protagonist, me, would finally seize control of her narrative. Courtrooms are arenas of truth, where the flimsiest of lies can crumble under the weight of evidence and the piercing gaze of justice. But they're also stages where you must perform the hardest role of your life while hiding behind a mask of composure. As I stepped into the courtroom, guided by Sarah's reassuring presence, I felt like an actor about to give the performance of a lifetime. Sarah had prepared me well. We had rehearsed every question, every answer, and every possible scenario. Yet there's something intrinsically intimidating about courtrooms. The wooden benches, the stern-faced judge, the air filled with nervous anticipation. Lisa, George, and Mark were already there, their faces distorted masks of anxiety and fear. They were seated together, a unified front in contrast to my solitary figure. The irony didn't escape me. Is the prosecution ready to present its case? The judge's voice echoed in the courtroom. Sarah rose from her seat. Yes, Your Honor. One by one, we presented our evidence. The video footage showing Lisa stealing from the safe, the audio recordings capturing their verbal abuses, the financial documents proving the embezzlement. Then it was time for personal testimonies. Mrs. Emma Johnson, could you please take the stand? Sarah beckoned me. Sitting on that witness stand felt like sitting on a throne of my reclaimed dignity. I narrated my story, the manipulation, the humiliation, the betrayal. My voice wavered but didn't break. My eyes watered but didn't overflow. This was my truth, my moment. Did you ever consent for the defendant, Mrs. Lisa Thompson, to take the money you had saved? Sarah questioned. No, I did not, I responded. And what about your husband, Mark Johnson? Did he ever defend you against the abuse? He didn't. In fact, he sided with his parents every time. Cross-examination was tougher. Their lawyer grasping at straws, trying to paint me as an emotionally unstable woman who had imagined her victimhood. It didn't work. The evidence was too strong, my resolve unbreakable. Finally, the judge pronounced the verdict. I find the defendant, Mrs. Lisa Thompson, guilty of theft and order her to serve 1 year in prison. Additionally, the defendants will pay $200,000 in compensation to the plaintiff. This court also grants Mrs. Emma Johnson her petition for divorce. The gallery erupted into murmurs, reporters scribbling away furiously. Lisa's face was pale, disbelief and horror written all over it. Mark seemed shattered, his eyes meeting mine for a fleeting second before he looked away. As the bailiff took Lisa away, she broke down. Emma, please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You should have thought about the consequences before, I replied, my voice steady but void of emotion. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt like a bird freed from years of captivity. The sky seemed a shade bluer, the air a touch fresher, and my steps a bit lighter. However, my revenge wasn't just about the court ruling, the money, or the divorce. It was about shattering their illusion of invulnerability, making them realize that they were not untouchable. It was about proving to myself that I could fight back, that I was not the person they had tried to make me believe I was. It was also about freedom. Freedom from a toxic marriage, freedom from suffocating in-laws, and most importantly, freedom from the chains of self-doubt and humiliation. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. The divorce and the trial had drained me emotionally and mentally, but I was ready to rebuild one brick at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time, armed with newfound strength and resilience. In my rearview mirror, the courthouse became smaller until it disappeared completely, a symbol of a chapter firmly closed. Ahead lay the open road, stretching far into the distance, inviting me into a future of endless possibilities. And as I drove on, A smile crept onto my face. For the first time in years, I felt like myself, like Emma. The Emma who wasn't defined by her failed marriage, deceitful in-laws, or a stolen safe, but by her courage, her dignity, and her indomitable spirit. This wasn't just revenge. This was reclaiming my life, reclaiming me. And oh, how sweet it felt.